to another webinar for the aspiring school leaders. Tonight we have two outstanding principals. We have Craig Vroom and Tim McDermott. Tonight we're going to talk about the top 10 things you need to know about being an outstanding school leader. I will let each of these gentlemen, introduce themselves. After they share their top 10 list, we will have an opportunity to have a question and answer period at the end. So thank you both for being here and giving your time tonight. I definitely appreciate all that you do for the Aspiring Leaders Program.
Tim, lead us off there, sir.
All right. So my name is Tim McDermott. I am an elementary school principal in Batavia, Illinois. So I'm just west, well, like half an hour, 45 minutes west of Chicago. I'm a principal at Alice Gustafson Elementary School. This is my second year here. Before that, I was a principal at another elementary school in our district for 4 years. And then, boy, lots of years in the classroom. So that's a little bit about me. I'm excited to partner with Craig tonight. So how about you?
All right. So, yeah, I'm excited to be here as well. Jodie, thanks for having us back or having me back. We've both done one before, so hopefully we can clean it up for our second go at it. You threw out the word outstanding there. That's appreciated, but let's just say we'll throw some ideas your way. I am in my 24th year of education. I'm in my 10th year working at a middle school here in Hilliard, Ohio. I've spent all 24 years in Hilliard in the same school district. So some would say I might have blinders on, but I would say being connected and getting to know colleagues from across the globe near and far continues to keep my peripheral vision alive and well. So before being a middle school principal, I was an elementary principal. Before that, I was a middle school teacher and an elementary teacher. So I've seen both the elementary world and the secondary world. This is actually my last year at this middle school. Next year, I'm going to embark on a new journey at our Innovative Learning Campus, which is a great program here in the Hilliard City Schools, and very fortunate to get that opportunity to do that. So a little bit about me. I live in the community. I got a wife and 4 kids that keep me busy and put up with us as building administrators. So excited to have aspiring leaders here tonight, not only joining us live on camera and on the webinar, but of course those who will watch this down the road. So we're going to try to throw some things your way, some top 10 things that you need to know as you take your own leadership roles. So with that, Jodie, do I turn it back to you or you want us to keep rolling? We're going to keep rolling. All right. So Tim, you and I decided to hop on a Google Doc and share some ideas back and forth about what we felt that they would want to know stepping into their own roles. And each time we do this, I always had to remind myself that the webinar is intended for aspiring leaders, folks that haven't sat in our chairs but are hoping to, right? And so as I'm talking tonight and hopefully sharing out, hopefully what I can share gives you that lens and that understanding. I tell you, 17 years into this, I do not have it figured out. I do what I can. I do the best that I can, but I would tell you I'm here on parent-teacher conference night, and I am surrounded out there by some amazing people. So I'm going to tell you that a lot of it's going to come back to that. But I can start off, Tim, or you can with number 10.
But yeah, you want to hit it? Go ahead. Start with number 10.
All right. Well, I think you're going to find a common theme here with number 10 because right here off our document we're working, start with building relationships and connecting with all stakeholders. You know, tonight, like I mentioned, is parent-teacher conferences. It's important that when you're at events, when you're in your school, that you're not just tied down to this desk, to this chair, to this email, to all the work that we're doing. But it's making and forming and really fostering those relationships with your community. Tonight, we've had hundreds of parents walking our halls. The worst thing I could have done was to sit in this chair while they're out there. Instead, we get out there, we engage with our parents, we engage with why they're here. We joke when we know them about hopefully their conference went well. And we also have to recognize maybe when a conference didn't go well so we can step into that. So I think for me, that top 10, and hopefully, Tim, you'll jump into number 10, it's just those conversations. It's talking, and that's what's on my mind tonight is our parents, our community, and building those relationships. Tim, what would you add to that?
I would totally agree with that. So, you know, it's funny because Jodie and I were talking a little bit about the school I have here, and one of the things when I transitioned over to our school is my office is like not connected with the rest of the school. It's really odd because they built a new addition. We have our early childhood wing. And so I have to be really intentional about getting out of my office and walking our hallways, talking to our staff, talking to our students. One of the things that I do every morning is I am out there on duty at our circle drive where all of our kids are getting dropped off. So I'm giving high fives, fist bumps to all of our kids as they're coming in the morning. And whether it's raining or snowing or really cold, I make it a point to be out there in the morning. And the same thing at the end of the day. I do one of our crosswalks at the end of the day. We have a lot of walkers. So I'm able to say, speak to our parents and talk to them at the end of the day, which is, to me, which is really, really important and really cool, is a start. The other piece I was going to say is it's easy as a principal or as an assistant principal or as an administrator in the building to be removed from students. You get caught up in, email or paperwork or meetings. And really got to remember, it's always about the students in our building. And really be intentional about making connections with kids. So, I try to eat lunch or hang out with our kids in our lunchroom or go out to recess and talk to students or hang out in recess and make sure that I'm in the classrooms and really being intentional about that because it's so easy to get sidetracked. What do you think, Craig?
Yeah, Tim, it's funny. We could spend this whole webinar simply on that relationship side. And I think people will see with our top 10 list we created, so many of these things are going to come back to it. The same theme, right?
Right.
I'm here tonight and I got 70 teachers in the building and one of my good colleagues, not my teacher, not one of my teachers, one of my colleagues just poked his head in the door and I almost wanted to wave him in and give him a little bit of airtime because that's the evidence that you get when teachers are willing to stop by, poke their head in. Doesn't matter what you're up to, you've got that ability to connect back and forth. And that's, like you said, it's so important to stay focused on that. For the aspiring leaders that will end up watching this, or to AJ tonight and others that drop in, it's not easy and it takes time. And I don't want to get ahead in our list, but you'll see that and you'll know as you get into your first leadership role, don't assume it's going to be natural. Don't assume it's just going to happen. It really takes the nurturing of it. The last thing I wanted to add for this bullet point before we go on to number 9, because one of the things I wrote in my notes, and AJ, I don't know if you're a secondary or an elementary guy, but when you go to events, make sure you don't get in the trap of hanging out with or standing along the fence line, especially if you're a secondary administrator, with the other secondary administrators. You see each other from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. When you're at events, my rule of thumb is I'm with the people. I'm with the teachers. I'm sorry, not teachers. I'm with our parents and I'm with our community. If I need more time with my administrators, I need to build that into my working day because as a middle school guy going to basketball games and football and cheer competition, I need to be with the parents because that's where you get the pulse of your building. So again, aspiring leaders, think about that as you go forward with an opportunity, to get into that role. All right, Tim, I'm going to throw it to you number 9. I'm going to go close my door real quick because they're out there chatting.
All right.
You hit number 9.
Sounds good. So number 9 is take time to listen, to seek understanding, and to learn about the history of the school, as well as the issues that are important to teachers. So one of the things I think is really important for an aspiring leader, as you're transitioning into your new role, as you're moving into that leadership position, it might be at the school you're at, or most likely it might be at a new school. Before day one, before you start, start to make those connections with the teachers. What I did is when I transitioned to my school now, it happened to be in the same district, so it really was rather easy. But I came over here quite a bit in the spring, and I met with teams and talked to them. And I had lists of questions I wanted to find out about what issues were important to them, what things that they felt they wanted to continue, what were values. And so that gave me some background before I even started on day one and made any changes that would have been super disruptive or eliminated something that people had that were really, really important to them. So, I think that's huge as you start in that transition. So starting meeting with teacher teams or individual teachers, and then even, if it's a PTO, PTA, but a parent group, really trying to get to understand what you're walking into before you begin to create your own thing or your own ideas. Really take time to listen.
Yeah. Before, as you begin thinking about the culture you're going to create, you better listen really carefully to the culture you're walking into, because you're going to know exactly where you need to go. It's going to become pretty evident the direction you need to head. So I got 3 notes I jotted as I was listening, Tim, because I'm an active listener. I always try to remember to listen before I speak, and I had to learn that. And I'm in my 17th year, and I've only, through a couple of good reads and a couple of great mentors of my own, been able to get better at that. So here's a couple things. Tony Saninas and Ross Cooper, both connected educators, both recently started new professions. Tony is a superintendent, and Ross mid-year took over an elementary building, I believe, in a principalship out in Long Island or New Jersey. I'll offend whichever one he's not. But they both talked about their first days in office or their first days on the job and how they had intentional conversations with their stakeholders to do exactly, Tim, what you just talked about. Listen, right? Have a couple of simple but powerful questions you can ask and get the conversation going. So a shout out to Tony and Ross for modeling that for aspiring leaders. And here's a little trick that we just learned recently, and I'll remember who taught us this. It's called start, stop, continue. So if you're an aspiring administrator and you get that first leadership job and you're looking for a way to get feedback from your new staff, it's called start, stop, continue. It's 3 questions. Ask your staff, what do you want me to start, or what do you want to start here at your building? What's happening at your building that you want to stop? And then what do we need to continue doing? And talk about a thought starter. Talk about just provoking and getting conversation going. So we learned that recently. I'll shameless plug Tim Kite Focus 3. I'm sure above the line he had something to do with it. It sounds like a Tim Kite-ism. He's very popular here in the great state of Ohio with our Buckeyes. But that's what he talked about with a start, stop, continue. So very important that we listen. So I agree. Shall we move on to number 8?
Sounds good.
I love this one because we all get that it's my first year, so I don't have to know everything. But I use that in my year 17. I wrote down here, and we shared back and forth, it's okay not to know everything. You know, sometimes we feel like once we get into these roles that we have to have all the answers, and we need to be able to respond to those teachers. And when they have questions, or a parent, gosh, the parents are the tough ones. The parents come at us with, what are you going to do about, or I need to know more about, or special ed law, or whatever the case may be. And I love to do this. Time out. I have no problem with pressing pause and taking a step back and saying, whoa, I don't know. I still use it to this day. I don't know, but I'm going to find out for you, and I'm going to get back to you. So I would encourage all of our aspiring leaders, especially out of the gate. You get the free pass, almost a free pass the first year, right, Tim? So why don't you use it? But you might as well use it as long as you can.
Yeah, I would totally agree. So, when I thought about this, yeah, I mean, this is one, somehow we have this expectation that, just because this person's the principal or the leader, they have all the answers, which is not true. Like, that's the worst thing to do, is pretend to know something when you don't know something. Because that really can undermine trust that people have with you. And the next time they're like, I don't know if I'm going to go to them because, they didn't handle this the right way, or they thought they knew, but they didn't know. It is okay. It's 100% okay to say, I don't know. Because I think, one of the things we took notes on is this idea of vulnerability, and to show vulnerability. And I was just reading this book the other day on culture, and it talked about this idea that, sometimes we think trust leads to vulnerability, but this author was actually saying vulnerability leads to trust.
Ooh, I like that.
I thought was really, really cool, shift in that connection. But we just had data days today, which was a really long day. But there's some really challenging and hard conversations when we're talking about how do we support students. And you really have to listen to everyone in the room, take that all in, and people will often look to you to make that decision. Sometimes you say, I don't know. Let's find out. The other pieces that for me that I use is sometimes, when parents, especially with parents coming in, and they had a bad experience, or their child had a bad experience, and you listen. But you're right, Craig. I say, you know what? I'm going to look into that, and I'll get back to you.
Yeah,
that's perfectly okay. You don't have to have the answer right there. And sometimes you feel like when you're new, oh my God, I don't have an answer. This shows weakness. But really, they want follow through, and that's what parents want. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I would just, again, piggyback that. Now, Tim, in a joking way, somewhat jokingly, if you're saying you don't know all the time, then we might want to be doing a little bit of more professional growth, right? And when we don't know, let's find the right resources to reach out to. And I'll probably steal number one of our numbers, but showing that vulnerability and building that trust, reach out to those people that can help you answer those questions, right? I mean, we got some really smart people we get to work with every day. You might as well use them. So, hey, AJ, I love your son creeping in there on the back. That's what it's all about. All right. I wrote this one down, and I don't know where it came from, but I think it's something that's a pet peeve. So I'm going to say it. When you're an aspiring leader, when you're a leader, be on time. We're setting the tone. I don't know if I can just jump in here real quick, Tim, but this is one that as I think about being a building leader for 17 years, we're gonna create pet peeves, or we're gonna have pet peeves. We're gonna have things that sit well with us and don't sit well with us. And even though we all are gonna have conflicts and things are gonna come up and kids are gonna keep us home, or we're gonna get late running out of the house, maybe it's twofold. Maybe it's be on time, and when you can't be, communicate that. Let someone know. It's simple, right? We're all connected. Simple letting people know when we can't be on time. So I don't know if you've got any personal experiences, Tim, on your end with that, but I know for me recently, I ran into a situation with a staff member who missed a very important IEP meeting with no phone call, no excuse, no legitimate reason under the age of 10, right? So no child in tow. So I don't know about you, but that one really, really sits with me, and I got to always remember that.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. So I ask our teachers when we have a staff meeting or other meetings in the morning that that they're expected to come in earlier than usual. Hey, life happens.
Yeah,
I totally understand that. Yeah. Give me a heads up. Shoot me a text. And I tell people, please don't email me, because I may not get that email before the meeting. I have my phone on me all the time. Fire a text, hey, whatever the reason, and then I can circle back with that individual later in the day and just check in. Is everything okay? If we have had people from flat tires to, hey, my kid just threw up, I'm trying to figure out coverage. I'll be there when I can. And I think most of the time, our staff, they want to do well. They want to be professional and want to be treated that way. And I think when you just have that expectation of just give me the common courtesy if you can't make it, or if you're going to be late, so we're not left waiting and wondering. And I agree, modeling that is really important.
There you go. Wow. And that's what I was going to bring it. That's what I was going to bring it back to. We have to be. This started off as everyone else has to be on time, but you're right, Tim. We got to be able to look in the mirror and make sure that we're doing it ourselves. My greatest blunder was I was a first-year teacher quite a few years ago, and I was the kid that overslept, right? And that memory stuck with me ever since. And now as a leader, not only do I hold those, my peeps, my colleagues accountable, but it helps me hold myself accountable. And we've got to make decisions that make sure we're in the right place at the right time. So that's an important one to me. So aspiring leaders, make sure you're on time, be on time. Unlike anyway, well, all right. What do you say about number 6 there, Tim, about your meetings? We love meetings, don't we?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, meetings to meet are even better.
Yes.
But, people, this is time is such a precious commodity. If we do not need to meet, let's not meet. So, and that you're a couple things are happening. One is you're giving people back the time. And 2 is when we do meet, you're really telling people this is really important that we're all getting together. When we sit down and we have a scheduled meeting, we don't have an agenda for that meeting. We don't really know what the topic is. I mean, we've all been there. We've walked into meetings and, half an hour later, you're wondering, what am I doing here? I got other things to do. So I think that just shows people that you really value them. You value their time. You respect that. So they're really, if we're meeting just to meet, that, we need to get rid of those.
So, Tim, you served that one up for me on a platter, so that's perfect. So I'm going to hit it out of the park for us. A couple things, aspiring leaders, as you think about meetings, because we have so much we can cover, right? And we want to cover, we want to talk about, want to grow. Meetings are about growth, right? That's why we have them. We're coming together so we can grow about something. We can grow about understanding state testing. We can grow to understand about social emotional needs of students. We come together meet about back to school events and what that might look like, or great. I mean, there's so much we can meet about, right? So first of all, let's not put ourselves in a situation to look around the room and have a meeting just to meet. Agendas, right? You mentioned that, Tim. Know what you're going to do. Come in, leader. Have your plan in place. The other thing that I've done for many, many years, and I had to learn to do this as a secondary principal. See, as an elementary, we do it on our own, right? Sometimes you don't have that bounce off of person. I don't know, Tim, if you've got someone you can go to with some of that. But
I do.
Yeah, it's so perfect. So in my elementary experience, it was just me. So I had a teacher leader that I ended up connecting with, and she was a huge part of my growth. But middle school, Catherine and I, we sit down and we time it out. I mean, don't trust me, we don't have to talk the whole thing through, but we do our agenda, we mock out how long it's going to take. And our big thing is we have an action step. So what are we going to do? So you have your action and then have your takeaway. I've been hearing the same thing for 24 years. If it's not practical and applicable, we're not doing it. There's no reason. If I can't take that staff meeting moment or that meeting moment away and apply it back into my environment, my world, my 20 square feet, then we're not going to do it. So I think that, leaders, is important to remember. If you get yourself having to cancel meetings, you may want to do a gut check of what you're doing to begin with. And I think for aspiring leaders, especially the ones that are going to watch these awesome Jodie Pierpoint webinars, are going to know A-game, connected educators, find your resources. So when you do have meetings, you've got something positive, something powerful, and something you can offer to your staff. So many great things we can do out there. Tim, how long did you say you've been an administrator?
This is my 6th year.
6th year, okay. So you've got all the tricks figured out. You know it all by now.
No. I know enough to be dangerous. How's that?
So since we're talking about meetings, let's go on a quick tangent here. I know for myself, so I'll set it up with what we do, and then you can give me some feedback what you do. What we do is we run our staff meetings, our professional development meetings, much like we ask our teachers to run their classrooms. Workshop model, I do, we do, you do. We have things that need to be whole group. We break them down. Is that pretty common where you're at, how you lead, or shed some little?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny because when we do discussions, it's always small group discussions. If we're talking about, hey, we want to use this new instructional strategy in our classroom, and we want to get teacher feedback, it's never whole group because we want equity of voice. We want everyone to participate in that. So yeah, I would say that's a really good example of. And the other piece is we ask our teachers to lead a lot of the professional development. I always say, hey, if I'm leading this, we're in a world of hurt. I say that jokingly, but in all honesty, we want to build equity with our staff. And we have a lot of experts and a lot of great people in our building. We want to tap into that.
Yeah, leaders build leaders, right? I mean, we got to find teachers on staff. And if we keep hearing from the same teachers, we need to make sure that we're cultivating, like you said, those others. Find those diamonds in the rough. Find the ones that you know might be doing great classroom instruction, but are a little leery to get in front of their peers. And how can we bring them out through maybe those small group conversations, or give them a task, work that out before the meeting and have some of that. So look at you, Tim. You're on fire tonight.
All right. I think that was like our next topic, right?
There you go. Do it. Well, you going to start off for us?
Yeah, so I mean, the next one is you grow, they grow. So you really, as an aspiring leader, you need to think about how you're going to lead your teachers and develop them. And really, that goes back to how do you use your time. We, for the most part, I would say 75-80% of our staff meetings are really professional development meetings. When we're together, we're really talking, and we link them to what is our school improvement action plans. So there should be a nice linkage between here's our building goals, and then what's the learning for our teachers that need to go along with those goals. You're bringing that clarity to everyone. These are the 2 or 3, whatever. These are the most important things that we're doing this year. Let me give you an example. So SEL is really, really important to our staff. And so we created we devoted the first part of our day in all of our classrooms to morning meetings. That was a big push for us.
Wow.
And so we spent a lot of time at the beginning of the year talking about, well, what can that look like? How do we involve students? And so a number of our early year staff meetings were based around that. So we actually went out, took videos in classrooms, came back, teachers had discussions. It was really, really powerful because, that momentum got rolling and it just became what they did. But without carving out or planning out for that professional development, that initiative wouldn't have occurred.
Yeah. Can I hop in real quick?
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
I know we're supposed to be talking about how we grow, they grow, but talk to me, and for the aspiring leaders, about that social emotional component. Is that something that's newer to you this year? I mean, we always care about the social emotional well-being, but saying SEL means you're doing something intentional.
Yeah. So this is for our district. This is probably last year. It rose to the elevation that people wanted to make some changes about how do we connect with our students.
That's awesome.
And so many of our teachers went out and did some training in ACEs and some other things. And then when they brought that back, we tried to figure out as our building, well, how do we tie this into what we're doing here in our school? And we talk a lot about building that classroom community and how important that is, because if you don't take time to be intentional with that and connect with your students and have your students connect with each other, they're gonna eat up your instructional time throughout the course of the day.
Yeah.
That child who, if he had a bad experience, he wants an outlet to talk about that, or she. Yeah. If you don't have a structure or system in place to allow that to happen, they're going to come up to you during math instruction or reading instruction or some other time and interrupt that instructional time. Yeah. So that was important for our teachers. That was a big push for them.
That's really neat. We use a framework called Panorama. Okay. That's a social emotional, that's a tool where we actually give a survey to students. They take it as part of their year. It's a quick 15-minute or less, and it gives teachers back data, sense of belonging, hope, trust, all of those components. And then those teachers can turn around and have conversations with each other as teachers. What does our data look like? And I'm not a huge data guy. I love data, don't get me wrong, but I think social emotional is about getting to know the kid, right? The relationships, like you said. But it is interesting to have data for the SEL side of things and then be able to use that. So as aspiring leaders, make sure you get in there right away as you talk about getting to know your students and staff and ask what your district is using. In fact, this is a great when they say, do you have any questions at an interview? Ask the people that are interviewing you, what do you do to offer your students that SEL side of their school day? Because we've been around 20 plus years. We got the whole child is right back around. Who would have thunk it came right back to the beginning? So great stuff there. Gosh, the last thing I'll say, Tim, on professional development is, and we're doing it now, we're growing, we have to model it. A lot of people know, being a member of the Compelled Tribe, we got into blogging and writing. I share that with my teachers, aspiring leaders. We have to show our teachers that we're learning right alongside with them, because it's really easy for us to go into a staff meeting and say, here, do all these things, and then we get to go back to an office and answer emails while they're in the trenches. So if we model that we're doing our own growth and our own learning, that creates a little bit of, I'm blanking on the word. That just creates that ability for them to see that we're doing the same thing they are.
Yeah, okay. I would agree 100%.
Yeah, gosh, it's already 7:30. I think we got to keep moving. I love the next one, and it's the hardest. I think this is the hardest one on the list for any leader to do. I don't know. Maybe you'll disagree. What do you think? Hold them accountable.
Oh, it's tough. You want to be their friend sometimes.
You do, and we have diplomas that hang on the walls, and we know they went to college, and they're really smart people. We gave them keys to classrooms, right? But then they screw up. Right. We all do. We do. We do as leaders. And then at the end of the day, we've got to be the ones as the leader to hold them accountable. That when a student isn't succeeding in a classroom, why is it? And I guess I should pause real quick. Holding them accountable is not placing blame. Holding them accountable is about having conversations. It's about having conversations about the events that are happening, what's taking place, what's going on in the classroom environment. If there is a concern with a student or a disconnect with colleagues, maybe it goes back to earlier up in that list about listening. How can we listen better? How can we support them? So as we're holding them accountable to meet those expectations we have as leaders, that we're not blaming. Because that I've been there as a leader. I've been held accountable, but it felt like I was getting blamed, like I was doing something wrong.
Right.
And for me, that's not the intent. The intent is to grow them, make them better, to encourage them. I'll shut up for a minute. What do you think on accountability?
Yeah, this is probably the hardest one, because no one really wants to. I don't know many people that embrace a difficult conversation and just relish in this is going to be so much fun and enjoyable.
Right.
I know that there's been nights I've lost sleep because I know I have to talk to somebody about, something they did they messed up, they dropped the ball, or we have to investigate a situation because we have a parent complaint. And that just eats away at you because like I said, I don't know anyone who really says, hey, this is awesome. We didn't go in.
Yeah.
I know I didn't become a leader to have those kinds of conversations. But you have to, because for two reasons. One, that everyone else in the building is watching.
Yeah.
And they know that someone messed up, and they want to know that they want to know that something's going to be done about it. And if you ignore it, that sets a tone and really can eat away and undermine culture that you're trying to build in your building. And the second is you as the leader are ultimately accountable for what's happening in your building. And if you know something isn't right and you don't address it, that's on you then. Yeah. And so these are things that, as much as you don't want to do it, you have to.
Yeah.
And like I said, I've had sleepless nights trying to wrestle with how do I enter into this conversation. But you just have to.
Yeah. And I will admit to the small group or the large group that probably my one of my weaknesses, and I let off this bullet point with this, is sometimes I struggle with this because conflict is not a natural emotion. No one got into, this business or any line of work, whether it's at home in a relationship or at work with colleagues, to have conflict. So what I had to do is I had to coach myself out of it not being personal. And that's what I said a little bit earlier. It was more about the growth part. And when I let in with a better setup, I got a better response. I love, Tim, what you said earlier about trust. So accountability holds that person to what they're supposed to be doing, and you build the trust there. But I would say that I knew that I was not doing a good job of holding people accountable by the people that were doing the right thing, giving me feedback through that staff survey saying, Craig, you're not holding people accountable.
Right.
That's hard feedback to get. And as leaders, we don't often put ourselves out there, but when I was getting that feedback, that was my gut check of saying, okay, I got to do this. There's a great book out there, was it Crucial Conversations? It's all about having those tough conversations. I would read that one before you're a leader. And I would read that one if you're in a relationship at home. I'd read that one if you've got a cat. It doesn't matter. You need to read that one because it'll give you some tools and some opportunity to reflect on those types of conversations. Trust, 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 Tim. It all comes back to trust.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, you know what we've got about 10 minutes left. We're still only on number 3. So let's
smash them all together.
Let's do it. All right. So probably the reason we got into this leadership thing had nothing to do with meetings, had nothing to do with HR forms, had nothing to do with holding people accountable. I don't know about you, but I got in this whole thing for kids.
Absolutely.
And that's what number 3 is. If you want to be an awesome administrator and have a reputation with your community out there, know your kids. Know them. And I'm not just talking about names. I've got 900 plus students here. I do not know 900 names. I will tell you, every single day of the year, I see a student that I've never seen before. That's not a good feeling, but I make sure I find out who that student is. I try to learn names. I try to learn interests. I try to find out how they're performing or underperforming and make those connections. Because the hardest part about me leaving this job, even though I'm excited about a new opportunity, is I'm going to miss not going to basketball games at night. I'm going to miss not being on the sidelines cheering on student athletes, going to choir concerts, being a part of that community. So for me, connecting with kids is what it's all about. It sounds cliche, I know, but what'd you go into administration for, Tim? The Friday donut run?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. It is about connecting with kids. And I think I'll transition fun. And that is, you know, like this job can be incredibly stressful because you can have days where you just feel like you got chewed up and spit out and it went sideways on you. But you need to take time to have fun. And I think the best way to do that is through connecting with students and remembering it's about the kids. So I try to be really intentional. I do a couple things in our building to have fun. I had this crazy idea of having a student run podcast, like stories from our school. And so I was like, hey, I'm going to do this with kids. And that's one way every week that I have to carve that time out to meet with kids. What's the stories they want to tell? How are they going to share it? And that really brings some joy to, you know, my week, is knowing I get to do that regardless of whatever went wrong that morning. I know that's on my calendar. That's something that is going to be enjoyable for me. How about you?
Tim, you know, I love that story because we do student announcements here at the middle school. We have a news crew that comes in. They use their iPads. They film them on the spot. Oh, I love AJ. He's telling somebody, no, go to bed. Sorry if you're listening to this and you're not live with us, but AJ just put a kid to bed through the room. All right. So I love what you shared. So our news crew, we film every morning during third period. They put together all their sound bites or video bites, and then we email it out to staff, and then they watch it on tape delay. One of the coolest things for me is almost every single morning the news crew comes down through the office, barely even knocks because I have an open door policy. As long as that door is open, you're allowed to walk in. And they say, Mr. Vroom, you got anything for today? So I get to do a little soundbite. And trust me, you can imagine I'm not big on being on camera, but they come in and they love it. That's like the highlight of their news thing. It says, Mr. Vroom, have anything quirky for us today to do? And many days I don't. But that's just, again, a simple way for me to connect. It's immediate interaction with the news crew, but then it pipes out to the entire student body. They can see that I'm here on a Tuesday and on a Wednesday and a Thursday. And it's quick. It's intentional, but it's quick, and you can continue with your day. Kind of leads us back to that number 2, which is the having fun. I've got an office full of great things from kids. We did an art project up here in the corner where some of our advanced kids all got to choose an adult, a teacher in the building that they could do a project for. And a couple kids chose me. So the neatest part of that was they asked me what my interests were. They got to know me even better. They pitched some of their ideas. And the point of this is we had fun doing it. I got to be a kid. I got to be a kid while they got to be themselves, and I got to connect with them. So talk about just a fun way to do our jobs. Takes us away from stacks of teacher evaluations, because I got lots of those with my Cheetos, right? How many of these we want to do? OTES evaluations here in the state of Ohio. So again, that kind of stuff makes it fun. So I don't know. Quick side story on that.
No, I would absolutely agree with that. You have to have fun. Otherwise, I don't know why you're coming to work every day, right?
Exactly, right? So if you're stressed out being a principal, you may want to rethink being a principal. You got to be able to compartmentalize. You got to be able to say, you know what? I've got my admin meeting. I'm going to have to go down to the big house. I got to talk to the bosses. I got to do that part. I got to do my OTES, right? But if you can compartmentalize some of that, why wouldn't you carve out time for fun? Our big conversation today was, what are we going to do at the end of the 8th grade year? Because option A for their end of the year celebration was taken away. We had more fun talking about all the other choices we're going to have. I'm excited just to do those. But anyway, all right. So we're going to end on this webinar. We're going to end Aspiring Leaders on cultivating and creating and caring for the culture. That's what it all comes down to. You want me to set you up, Tim? You want to start it off with it?
No, go ahead. You can kick it off.
All right. So aspiring leaders, right? So we got into this gig because we thought we were going to shape the lives of hundreds of thousands of young minds. And it's not going to happen until we do all of the pieces and parts that you don't learn in all those courses that you take, right? Because there is no Principal 101 book. If there was, there might be one or two pretty decent attempts at it. But everything that I've learned in my last 17 years, or that you're going to learn in your first year, is it's going to start with your people. It's going to start with the families that show up every day, the kids that come here every morning, and the staff that will give more than we often realize. I spend a lot of time, a majority of my time, ensuring that I'm providing opportunities for my teachers to embrace their school day, to leave here just as refreshed as they walked in, and making sure whether it's pushing around coffee on a cart on a holiday, or celebrating a student's accomplishment, or acknowledging a teacher's hard work through ongoing, not just once in a while, but ongoing recognition. All of those little pieces that we do is going to create that culture that it's going to make it seamless. It's going to make it a great place. I've got 2 secretaries sitting out here at almost 8 o'clock at night for parent-teacher conferences that don't mind sitting there. We fed them. We encourage them to be here. We're acknowledging that they're giving up time with their families. And when you do all of those and have all of those conversations and acknowledge all of that time and that energy, your culture is just going to grow. And before you know it, they're going to say your building runs by itself. They know what they're doing. Central office doesn't show up anymore because they know that your staff is clicking on all cylinders. Your referrals go down. Your student engagement goes up. Kids are lining up at the door to get involved with stuff. Those are great pieces of evidence of your culture. Hundreds of parents walk through the door, and 99 of them walk out here with smiles on their faces because they know that their teachers were invested tonight. So sorry, that was kind of a rant on culture, but it's all of the little things that aren't so little, but if you take your time and you take your energy and you know where your effort's supposed to go, it's going to be speechless.
Yeah.
That's what it's going to be.
Yeah, I would agree 100% with that. I mean, it's all about those small little things. And you almost, like I think I used the word intentional earlier a few times, but this is where you have to ask yourself, did I connect with this person today? Did I thank this person for the leading a staff meeting?
Mm-hmm.
I try and write personal notes to our teachers for doing awesome things. I try to catch them doing awesome things and let them know. I have two teenage daughters. I dragged my daughters and her boyfriend to come here. It was like in this early December, and we wrote a note to every teacher on their whiteboard. And my daughters were like, "Are you serious?" I'm like, "Yeah." I had them all written. I just gave them I gave them the cards. They went around and they wrote them on the boards. But it's the little things that make a big difference. To folks, that they feel valued, they feel connected, they feel like they're a part of something that's bigger than themselves, and then they're willing to sacrifice and go that extra mile. That is so important. We do a few things where we're trying to build some new traditions here, to continue to build that positive culture. And hopefully they just become part of the fabric of what we do, and how we live our lives here. And that's something that I'm really trying to really focus on. And we talked about this earlier. So if you're new to leadership, it is easy to get buried in email. I mean, it is out of control. And I always joke with people. I said, I hate email. So for me, if a teacher emails me, I go and have a face-to-face conversation with them. Mm-hmm. And spend that time in trying to build that relationship we talked about earlier. But you need to make sure that you are thoughtful about what you're doing, how you're interacting with teachers, and the specific things that you're going to do to build culture at a staff meeting. I stole this idea from John Gordon, talked about this idea of the safe seat. I know you guys are Buckeye fans, but he talked about, I know. So he works with Dabo Sweeney in Clemson. Yeah. And this comes from Dabo Sweeney. They do something where each time they have a practice, they take one player, they put them in the middle. It's called the safe seat. They ask this player questions about who they are, their background, and they get to know the player. So we started incorporating that in our staff meetings. That's how we kick off a staff meeting. Randomly pick a teacher. I generate some questions, and we get to know them. Like today, we talked to one of our teachers who's a golfer, and we found out that he got to go to the Masters a few years ago, and all kinds of cool stuff. But you can bring your own unique style to that. But culture and building culture is probably the number one priority.
No, Tim, that's great. I love John Gordon. I love his work. We do a lot of that here. We've obviously if you're not familiar, listening to the webinar, make sure you get out there. We're not getting any kickback from John Gordon, but maybe you'd like to. I'm sure we take a check from him. But that's a great suggestion. I love some of your other suggestions as well. And I know we got to cut down here shortly and get on to questions, but I liked how you talked about personalizing your gratitude for people that give. And that's something that I will piggyback on what you do. For some of my leadership jobs, some of my other higher leadership type roles at Leaders Building Leaders, and I might have mentioned this in a different webinar, but I actually write them a letter, put it on letterhead, and with a blue pen. I learned this from an administrator 20 years ago when I got one of those letters, and I'm like, look at this, right? In fact, we went to old school mail this year, help build our culture. We have students of the week that model our R factor, or model our culture, right? Our blueprint. We got the old unicorn out, right? Pen and pencil. And we actually wrote letters, sent them home to parents. So, the generation of Facebook, and we're connected. I'm connected with parents. I don't mind them seeing me on Facebook and vice versa. You won't believe every Friday, sure enough, there's a parent showing off their child's letter about being a student of the whatever. So we talk about culture. How much did that just grow our culture?
Right.
By simply signing our names and thanking a student for doing what they're supposed to be doing. So whether it's doing the same thing for your staff or doing it for your students, and I would tell any aspiring leader, just ask questions. Ask other principals what they're doing. Ask successful principals what they're doing, and watch what unsuccessful principals are doing, so you know not to do that. And you know who they are. I mean, we see them everywhere. So, wow, we got through our list, Tim.
Woo!
We did it. Our top 10. I'm loving these webinars. I'm thinking I'm going to ask Jodie to come back again if she'll let me. AJ stayed with us the whole time. Congratulations to you. You're the winner tonight. I don't know what Jodie's giving away, but I'm sure she'll give away something, free something, and then maybe a John Gordon book. And then hopefully, as people get a chance to listen to this, and I know, Jodie, you're going to share it via social media. If people have questions, they can always reach out to either one of us. We're all members of the Compelled Tribe, right? Writing and working and reading and doing that. So back with that, Jodie, I'll turn it back over to you. You're going to unmute yourself. What do you got?
That's right. Thank you for reminding me I had to unmute myself. So thank you, gentlemen, for this. I am so many notes. This was an amazing webinar tonight. So much that I learned. And so we appreciate it. It will be up here soon.